Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So today I want to just let you guys know it's still going to be shorter again. I've had a lot going on the past 2 days, and today I had a lot of stuff go down in my personal life. So I have to have it be a bit shorter. But I'm okay. Everything's fine. I just want to say Happy Chinese New Year to everybody who celebrates that. Seer the Snake. Ooh. Anyways, so let's go ahead and continue this. We're going to talk about kids. Which I'm like, oh gosh, here we go.
Chance for her daughter to play softball, on the little 8-year-old softball team. And her daughter's body's too big for softball pants. So she can't wear the same uniform that her peers are wearing. And like awful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so listeners cannot see my face, but that's like a sad bummer face.
Yeah. And it just made me think like, oh my gosh, I was a thin kid. I never had to think about whether the uniform would fit me. That's like, and then that becomes a barrier to participation, right? I mean, if you're the kid wearing sweatpants when everyone else is wearing the cute uniform, not that softball uniforms are that cute, but whatever.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you can play the sport in the same way, right? So that was one example I thought of that, that the thin kids are just not even having to think about, like, can I show up for this team and fit in, literally fit in.
Yeah.
But yeah, what other ways do you see it show up for kids?
Oh, I think a big one is the built environment. So like, for sure for me in middle school and high school in particular, those desks with a chair attached.
I agree with that. It's brutal. I went through a lot with those chairs. A lot. It was awful.
Right? We're like a real special kind of hell.
Yeah, it was very scary sometimes because sometimes they would be really rickety. And I would always be terrified of those chairs, like on a daily basis, terrified that something was going to happen.
Because in all cases, I didn't fit in the chair with the desk attached, right? I couldn't flip the desk down. I would just have to sort of like sit in the chair with the desk flapped up, which was also like a little flag waving to be like, hi, everybody.
That's true in university, but also in some high school desks were like that, but a lot of them were just awful, and I just had to deal with it. It was awful.
Fat kid, hello. Look over here.
And then how did you do your work? Like, I'm sorry, that's such a basic question.
No.
I just put your notebook. Yeah.
I mean, I would just try and write on my knee, and my notes were kind of garbage, and you know what I mean. Like, it made things nothing insurmountable, but it was like more unpleasant and more difficult, and there were more things to navigate there than there should have been, right? Yes. I would say in the worst case scenarios, I didn't fit into the chair or the desk, right? Either one. That was really hard. I think often on that same note, it is rare that schools or teachers are outfitting schools, and the same can be true of parents at friends' houses, with furniture, sort of knowing the weight capacity and knowing what it can fit and what it can't and that sort of thing. So I ended up opting out of a lot of both play dates with friends, but also like, physical games. Like I remember going to laser tag. So like, hello, welcome to my childhood in the 90s. Laser tag, the coolest thing you could do.
I played quite a bit of laser tag. Yep.
Yeah. And there was a point at which I stopped going because I was like, I don't actually think the laser tag vest thing is going to fit me anymore. So I like stopped going to friends' birthday parties, right? There is sort of a social isolation element that comes with all of this stuff. And I think, it never would have.
I agree with her there. I think that it does affect all those aspects for sure.
Occurred to me at the time, but boy, oh boy, like just a thimbleful of awareness from anybody's parents could have gone just miles and miles and miles.
Yeah.
For that sort of thing,
Yeah. So what should that look like? I mean, my readers, a lot of them are parents. Some of them are parents of fat kids. A lot of them are parents of, thinner kids or kids with degrees of thin privilege.
Mm.
How do we talk to our kids about this concept, and how do we, try to be more mindful of, exactly what you're saying, like thinking through the logistics of the birthday party, thinking through the logistics of the sports team, or, whatever it is, to make environments more inclusive for kids.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I come to this conversation not as a parent, but as a very proud and engaged aunt. So, like, grain of salt from a guy who's not taking care of kids around the clock. um, but I do think that talking to your kids about, like, do you think everybody can do this? Do you think everybody would be comfortable doing this? Like, who do you want to have there? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm not sure if this kid could do that. Mm-hmm. Which I think works around size. I think it works around disability. I think it works around a lot of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I also think, like, I have, as you can imagine, been very open with my niece and nephew both about, like, what I do and what I write about and why it matters and all that sort of stuff. And I think the thing that has surprised me about that, I felt nervous about it because it feels sort of quote unquote controversial or high stakes or something to talk to kids about body stuff. Mm-hmm. And as with anything else, as with talking to kids about trans issues, as with talking to kids about race, as with talking to kids about disability, about just about any sort of social issue, they are totally down, right? They have been totally down. And not only that, but it has opened up this vein of conversation that I don't think I would have had with them about, like, my niece, who's now 14, will come to me and be like, my friend is actually constantly telling me how fat she feels, and I'm actually fatter than her, so it feels really bad to me, but I don't want to take away how she's feeling. But also she calls her little brother fat as an insult. And, like, so we, like, have these pretty rich conversations to kind of unpack, like, what do you do with all of those competing things?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I don't know if she'd be that great at handling those conversations because her takes are not. I don't trust what she would say. I'll put it to you that way. Like, I wish she would be more specific because then I could more critique it. But I would just say I have some concerns about how those conversations are going.
So it does feel like this is one of those cases where, as adults, I think it's easy to let our imaginations kind of run wild with, like, how hard and complicated it's going to be. And truly, when you just sit down with a kid and you're like, listen, man, sometimes people are fatter than other people. And sometimes some people are mean to people who are fatter than other people or think that they don't deserve the same things. And we got to make sure, for folks who aren't looking out for fat people, we're going to do a little looking out for fat people. Yeah. What do you say? Like, that's pretty much it. And I don't actually know a kid who isn't moved.
I don't think that's that bad. That isn't that bad of a statement. So that, it's like, okay, I think that's okay. So it just depends. Her messaging might be softer towards kids, which would be better because otherwise her messaging is really awful. That doesn't sound that bad. I think an acknowledgement that people are different, an acknowledgement that, I don't know, you shouldn't necessarily be shaming people and that kind of stuff. I could see that as being a thing. Where I find it strange is just where if she's trying to put a sense of responsibility on the kid of, like, you need to do something about it. I don't know about that. That's where I'm like, like, I don't know. It just depends because it depends on the context, and I don't know. I don't know. I just have questions about that is all I'm trying to say. Again, I don't have kids either, so you kind of have to take what I say with a grain of salt too. But yeah, anyways.
To, like, be a helper, right? Who isn't moved to, like, want to assist and want to make things better for other people. So I think just tapping into that goes a long, long way.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very similar to how, we have research that shows that when white parents don't talk about race with white kids, we raise racists. And, it's like, it feels hard and scary to, like, first buy your copy of Anti-Racist Baby or whatever you're doing to start those conversations. And then your kids are so matter of fact about it that it's suddenly like, oh, this is very clear. And, I found that talking to my own kids about body size, they they can use the word fat in this very sort of unaffected, neutral way that is so beautiful to me as someone who had to like go through the process of reclaiming. And, you know, it's like, oh, this won't be something you have to reclaim. This will just be a word for you. Oh,
Yeah. And I would imagine, I mean, you tell me, I feel like the conversations that I have with,
I don't necessarily agree with that. I still think a lot of people would see it as an insult. I think a lot of times people forget that kids go to school and they are around other kids, they're around other adults, and they may not have those same takes on fat acceptance that you do. So that's not necessarily true.
folks who are parents is a lot, parents who are not fat, raising kids who are not fat, right? Is that they're really nervous that they're going to have like the thin kid who's just like calling everybody fat.
yes. I talk about this all the time. Yeah.
Constantly. And I think the way that I've handled that, again, as a non-parent with my niece and nephew, is to just be like, hey, this is a totally neutral word. Some people get their feelings hurt by it. So check in with people about what words they're okay with. And then if they're okay with it, you can use it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Just like creating even just like a sliver of daylight between what the word itself means and how people experience that word can help kids kind of like navigate a little bit, right? Like we do this all the time with like, you know, words related to your private parts or words related to really, there are lots and lots of times that we're sort of teaching kids about when and whether words are appropriate. And this is another one of those.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think you can talk about bodies in a really positive / you know, just normal way, and also teach your kids that like we don't talk about the bodies of other people, just like we don't touch the bodies of other people without their permission. Like there's a consent thing, you know, where like you can explain to, I mean, it'll probably happen after your 5-year-old yells it out in the grocery store, but then that's a great opportunity to say, hey, you know, we don't actually yell out people's physical characteristics in public because, you know, you just don't know how that's going to land. But it doesn't mean that their bodies are bad. It just means that we respect that people's bodies belong to them.
It's kind of I think that's difficult to try to, because it probably would be seen to the child as bad or forbidden or like a negative thing. It'd be really hard to try to reconcile that in a way that isn't that way. It might actually reinforce issues, body image issues in a kid if it's that extra of a thing. You have to be, in my opinion, if I were to have kids, I would try to promote the idea that body size is not emotional, which I think would be the best done by how you see your own body and by like teaching through mimicry. Because like if her kid is seeing her be like, oh my gosh, you can't say that person's fat, and oh my gosh, no. And if she has this certain emotional pitch, kids read the emotions more, in my opinion, than what you're saying a lot of the time. So I would just, in my opinion, it would just be try to promote the idea of body neutrality, or just like the way you talk about your body, just less emotional, you know? I think that would help. So not things like, oh gosh, I don't want to be in the picture, I look too fat. It's like that's something that when you say something like that, you're kind of teaching a kid that like to be that way. You see? So it's like, just take the damn picture. Like, get over it, basically, is what I'm telling you as a parent. Just get over it. Because I think it's more so the emotional pitch of how you talk about it, more so than talking about it, in my opinion. So I think that would be my advice as somebody who doesn't have kids, which again, that is, you know, you can take it with a grain of salt, but just be cognizant of if you have the issue or not. If you do have the issue, resolve it, or don't externalize that onto your kids. because there's already likely a genetic predisposition for your kid if you have this problem, and you do need to also watch and make sure that's not happening, especially after times of turmoil or trauma or something like that. Make sure that your kid isn't starting to do certain behaviors, and if they are, those need to be dealt with immediately. Immediately. So yeah, because they usually start out less, very mild, and then it gets worse sometimes. So I would just really make sure that you're not externalizing it onto your kid, and don't teach your kid like that example. I'm too fat, I can't be in the picture. Don't do that. Just take the picture. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares, basically. I know that's a little bit harsh, but I'm just being real. It's like you have to get over that kind of stuff, because kids see that, they feel that, and they will mimic that as well, or internalize it and be like, if I'm fat, or if I feel fat, or if this, I can't be in a picture. It's that kind of thing. But a lot of it, in my opinion, when it comes to E followed by the letter D, it's extremely mimic based. So you can't exactly fake it. You have to not have it yourself. You have to not have the problem yourself. So I'm very much an advocate for healthy parents raise healthy kids. And a kid is going to, for the most part, mimic what you're doing. And it can't be a do what I say, not as I do, because it just doesn't work with this type of thing. Because if they see you using food as a coping mechanism, then they're going to learn that that's how they cope, because they see you doing it. So you can't exactly hide it. So I would just be really, really cognizant of what's going on with you, and just make sure that you get out of that. So that way you're not helping to teach a child those behaviors to where they could be activated really easily if something happened, if anything happened, So just be very cognizant of that.
And it's up to them to talk about them if they want or not,
Totally. I mean, I think like a totally neutral parallel is like, you don't show up at a party unless you get an invitation to that party, right? Like, it's like, it doesn't have to be like loaded and heavy and
right.
hard,
That's
right?
Yeah.
That's just like, there's all kinds of stuff. You don't take a book from the library if you haven't checked it out and made sure it's available, right? Like, there are lots and lots and lots of ways that we like check on something first before we go ahead and do it.
I love it. Those are great examples. So then steering away from kids for a little bit, you talk a lot about, as we've said, the sort of fat people having these different levels of thin privilege, and why it's so important to articulate the difference between, what me as a size 16 experiences versus what you experience, and, these different levels. And, in general, I feel like that's something that the sort of body positive space, health at every size space, like we haven't always been great at doing that. And in fact, the small fat ladies like myself have done a lot of damage on that front. And we have some,
Okay, so we're already seeing, I think within the fat acceptance community, small fat is treated really, really badly. Within that community, they are seen as less important, less valuable, and it creates an incentive to gain, which you can see the way that she's talking about it. She's very easily demeaning that social category that she's in, very, very easily, which she's doing it to kind of seem holier than thou or righteous within the religion of fat acceptance. But it creates these incentives to gain more, which is horrible. I'm not exactly sure how they treat the mids. I know that they hate that term so much. They cannot stand it. The mid-size term. But mid-size is so subjective. I think it's harder for them to attack. It's like too complicated. So they really do attack small fat a lot. I've seen that. I actually was left alone for the most part in my small fat experience that I'm at the very tail end of.
Some karma to work off. So I have a question from a reader that, in reading it again, I realize it's actually a little bit more about health privilege than thin privilege. But
Great.
I think
Let's
it's
do it.
So I'm just thinking that outside of fat acceptance, it's actually probably a little easier because, you know, it's just a little easier socially than the other ones, to be fair. I think so. There's a little bit of hardships or a little bit of difficulty in the public. Like I said, you just have to be normal, which for someone like me, being SMO, being super morbidly obese for so long, it was a little bit of a learning curve in small fat. But like I said, I think as we adjust and just go through these changes as we go down the line, we'll have an easier time. So I adjusted pretty quickly to small fat, but it was a harsh adjustment in the beginning, and I am nervous about the mids because I have had a harsh transition every time, but I think it's just hard for me. Like, I just think change is hard for me, which I know I have to really work on this year to be more adaptable. It's really, really important. Because I am going through a massive identity change that it is stressing me out, definitely. So already I really don't have any confidence anymore. I don't know if it's purely psychological, if there is some physical effects from the weight loss again. You know, like I'm really back in the swing. So I don't know what's physical and what's psychological anymore. It's hard to tell because the physical side is more subtle, but it's still there in obesity. Like I can still feel a little bit of a downer from being in a deficit, but it's not anywhere what it used to be. I used to be really, really sad a lot in a deficit, and now I'm not. I just don't feel confident, and I feel very, very introverted. I've noticed I'm getting much more introverted, but I can't tell why. I don't know if it's a physical thing or if it's a psychological thing. I don't know, but I feel it. I'm getting more introverted, and it makes me nervous because, hello, I'm trying to do this, you know? So yeah, I think I am. I think it's probably psychological mostly. Like, I am struggling with this loss of identity a lot. It's stressing me out. So, yeah, if I seem kind of beaten down, that's really why. Like, and I just feel very, I don't want to say hopeless, that's too dramatic, but just, it's kind of like a letdown. I feel very like let down in a lot of aspects of my life. And I think it has to do with that greater mediocrity because I'm having mediocrity in a lot of areas of my life at the same time. But this is just me. I was telling my friend Lisa, I'm like, this is because I'm a Scorpio rising. Like, for some reason, everything is so dramatic. It's like in 2023, I had the most aggressively, dramatically boring year. Like, it was so boring. It was awful. It was horrible. That was, whew, man, 2023 was so difficult because the weight loss and everything, like, and just the stability I had in my life, it was so, like, it was the most boring year of my life. It was so boring that it, like, I don't even know. Like I said, the stability of everything, which it wasn't like financially stable. It was more so like I wasn't fighting with anyone, you know, or I wasn't like, it was just super introverted and like I wasn't doing crazy things in my life. Like 2022 was crazy. So to kind of go from like I'm doing everything all the time, to like I'm in a deficit very strictly, and I'm like totally flattened in 2023. It was just like I was always working, always dieting, always exercising. That was it. And it was like repeat, repeat, repeat. And I needed to get out. And I couldn't afford to do anything. So it was really hard. But I feel like I just felt, I got dumped and everything. I felt such a sense of being such a loser in 2023. Like it was so harsh. Last year, though, it was so stressful and chaotic and overwhelming that I was not bored at all, but it was kind of dazzling and dizzying. It was just like, holy crap. It was really a lot. And I burned out at the end. And then this year, I think so far, it's like, you're so ordinary. It's this feeling of like, you're so ordinary. And it's like, wow, like I feel like I went on such a crazy, wild adventure in 2024. And so far, it's like, okay, Alex, everything in your life is so ordinary. You're completely mediocre, completely typical on all levels. And it's just so aggressive. And I think it's hard for me on an ego level because I don't know why my life is this way. It just is. Everything is kind of dramatic. It's like everything happens at the same time. It's very strange. So it's like I don't feel bad, but I don't feel great. I just feel ordinary. And it's like, oh, it's just hard. One of you guys commented yesterday, and I really appreciated it, because I know that this aspect it isn't just me. And I know that this probably it's like a leftover of E followed by the letter D, because it was the same thing in 2023 where it was like my brain was so bored and understimulated from the hyperstimulation of the disorder. So it was very physical. This time, though, it seems very psychological. It doesn't feel physical. It's like more of an ego problem of like, oh, I thought I'd be further in life by now. I thought I'd have that. It's like you have all these types of questions. And I felt that way a lot throughout my weight loss, but for some reason, it's harder from an ego perspective when I can't really complain because nothing's particularly wrong. I haven't been hurt. I'm not struggling deeply, but I'm not thriving. You see, it's weird. And I think it's more of a psychological leftover from the disorder where it's like, I sometimes miss the drama of the disorder because it was always stimulating, and I don't have that. And last year I was dealing with the sort of psychological damage of the disorder, and it was very, very stimulating to face triggers and not do it, or have the other coping mechanisms in place and face all these different aspects. And like I said, it was dazzling and dizzying and overwhelming, whereas this year it's like there's such a lack of stimulation from a psychological perspective. And I don't have the disorder, and I've already dealt with all of these triggers, so I'm not ever triggered. So it's like the silence is there. And that's difficult sometimes at this moment. It's hard. And then it's like I'm not even gonna be able to call myself fat pretty soon. So I can't complain about that either. but it's also like when you're in the mids, it's like I can't really be all that excited about it either. You see, it's like, so I don't know. I don't know if it's because I do everything at once. That's probably why. Because I've just been working my ass off, literally and figuratively. And so I think it's like everything just hit last year, and I just was like, it's like a constant whack-a-mole. And then now it's like I got everything done, or I got so much done, and it's just like, oh my God, what the hell? It's like I did it. And I feel like sometimes when you have that E followed by the letter D, you feel, or like the legacy of it, in my case, you have a legacy, but also within it, you feel a drastic desire to self-sabotage. But for me, it's like I didn't last year, and it was dramatic that I wasn't going to self-sabotage a year ago. Now it's like I'm not self-sabotaging, and it's not dramatic because I haven't in a long time. You see, so it's like there's no sense of drama in my experience. And I feel like I could see a lot of people. I could see this being a relapse for a lot of people. That's all I'm trying to say. Because I think the intensity of the experience of it, it leads our brains to be somewhat numb sometimes without it. And I think it takes time to recover, especially when coupled with obesity and coupled with the low dopamine of obesity. So you have a psychological understimulation combined with the physical, and it's really difficult. So I know that was kind of deep, but that's what I'm going through. I feel very let down. I feel like I worked all this time and worked so hard to not be fat anymore, just for it to end like this, in the most anticlimactic, just whatever moment. And even on an internal level, it's just like, okay, you see, it feels like a letdown. So I don't know if anyone else ever felt that way, but I'm telling you, that's been my experience. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up pretty soon. Let's see what else they're going to say here.
Very related. So I would love to get your take on this. So she says, I may be a bit older than your typical demographic. I'm 55 years old, but one topic I haven't seen discussed when people talk about fat phobia. I'd like there to be more conversation about fat people who do have chronic health issues.
Okay. You know what? Let me just end it there for today. We'll just come back tomorrow because that was kind of a long tirade. And yeah, I will be back tomorrow. So let's just end it. Anyways, you guys, I will see you. Have a good one. Peace. Bye.